Hi there, I'm Claudia Christian, and you're watching Forbidden Planet TV. And I'm here to talk about Dark Legacies.
Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV. I'm Andrew Sumner. I am privileged to be joined by actor, singer, author, Babylon 5 legend, Claudia Christian. How are you, mate?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be coming back to the store June 10th. Yay!
And we are excited to be receiving you at the store on June 10th. We're really looking forward to it. I mean, you've been to the store, as we were just saying off camera, a number of times in the past with your long history of genre projects.
Yeah, it's always lovely to see that really tight-knit core of UK fans, and I think that it's been for the video games that I've provided voices for in the past. It's been for Babylon 5, and now we have the comic book. So there's always the same, I see the same 20 or 30 faces at a lot of events, and it's so lovely to see them again. I don't know if you know this, but I lived actually in London for 12, 13 years. So I had more of an opportunity to spend time with those people than I do now that I'm back in Los Angeles. So any opportunity I have to come over the pond, it's exciting for me.
And when were those years that you were living in London? Where did it kind of begin? When did it end?
Well, I first moved to the UK in 2004. I started dipping my toe in Bristol, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Because, yes, I lived in Bath for 6 months. I lived in a little town called Winterbourne Down near the Froome Mountains. It was really lovely. And then Bath, and then Bristol proper. I was doing a sci-fi series called Star Hike, which it's along the lines of Red Dwarf. Not exactly Babylon 5, but something that it was an excuse for me to move, because I was, to be honest with you, I was a little bit burnt out on Hollywood. I had turned 40, and I was, made to feel like I was the crone from, it was a bad era. I had really crappy representation. I was doing really, really bad films. I was not in a good place in my life, and the opportunity came, and I've always been an Anglophile, and I've just loved England my whole life. So I said, you know what, I'm going to sell my house. And by 2006 I sold up, and I bought a flat in London, and I stayed there until 2016. But I came back and forth quite a bit.
Yeah. I'm from Liverpool originally, and London's been my home for a long time. And the UK always delivers in terms of those, which is true of Liverpool as well. Those cities that have this great history and great civic buildings and hundreds of years of seafaring wealth behind them. So there's these incredible things to look at all the time.
Oh, it's just amazing going to York. I went to Leicester for the reinternment of Richard III. I went to for the reinternment. I went, I did a lot of Cornwall. I was shooting some projects around that area. England has so many unbelievable places. I have friends in Shropshire. The one thing I have not seen is the Lake District, and that I feel very remiss about that, because it's supposed to be so beautiful, and I'm such a nature freak. So I'm looking forward to exploring that someday.
I mean, it really is. That's a stone's throw in real terms, and certainly in American terms from where I grew up. And it is incredibly beautiful with these glass-like lakes, reflecting the sky and the hills and whatnot. Lovely.
I can't wait.
Did you ever get to the Yorkshire Dales, Claudia?
I did, yes. I had one of the producing partners on that sci-fi show was actually from Yorkshire. So we did a little bit of tooling around, and I'm sure you can imagine that I've probably done every convention in England. From
I'm sure.
From Loughborough to Blackpool, baby. So I've really done over the 30 years. I mean, imagine the show ended for me in 1999, I think. So I mean, I did a lot of shows. I remember at one point I did 2 months in my car with a friend of mine. I just did like all of Germany. went from convention to convention to convention. It was crazy. But back in those days, the convention world was a lot different, and you could actually make a living and have fun and travel the world, and it was quite extraordinary. You know, if you had a lean year, you'd go out on the road for 6 months and make some dough. Nowadays, it's totally changed, as you know. It's a different animal now. Now we do promote projects and
yeah.
to see fans.
It really is. It would seem to me that an interesting side effect of the period throughout which your career has been very active, and you have so many credits, and you know you've got fingers in so many different amazing pies, that throughout that 30-year span, whatever it may be, must be an incredible time to be an actor or performer who's become linked with the genre industry, with science fiction and fantasy, because it just gives you all of this other stuff that you can experience in addition to theatre or cinema or film. And you get to go out and meet people in a very real sense and interact with their passions.
It's such a gift. People, you know, and believe me, a lot of people were always taking the piss out of sci-fi actors, especially when I started. You know, I mean, it did not have the genre did not have the respect it did in the UK, in the US at all. I mean, we were really the ugly stepchild of television and film, until really Battlestar Galactica made it more elegant to be in science fiction, the remake, obviously. But until then, it was sort of something that people poo-pooed. And for me, I was very hesitant about being sort of typecast. But as my life has gone on and the journey has gone on, I realize how much of a gift it has been to be associated with the genre world, because you're right, it expands your life by not only meeting the people and being able to interact with the fans, but they're genuinely loyal and they care about you and your projects. I would not have been able to make my documentary One Little Pill, which has saved countless lives. I would not have been able to make that film without the financial support of my fans. And that is fairly amazing. I raised $60,000 to make that documentary, and that documentary has literally saved thousands of lives, and it's all thanks to the sci-fi fans. I mean, that is remarkable, you know, and it's true. Like other actors have dabbled in stand-up comedy or improv, or they make CDs as singers, and the fans come out and support you. It's not like they're myopic in their focus of what they want to see from you. They support you as an artist, and they want to listen to your music, they want to see your paintings, and that's something that I don't know you necessarily see that level of passion and commitment from other genres. I don't see it. You know, I've done drama, I've done comedy, I've done nighttime soaps, I've done pretty much everything, and I've never seen that level of commitment from a fan base in my life, other than science fiction fans, truly.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing to hear and consider, and it is something that I've got something with this job. Of course, I've got a lot of experience of it, but I guess my personal connection to what you just said is that during seasons 2 to 5 of Babylon 5, my kids are now, you know, card carrying adults, you know, in the mid-20s. Their mum was pregnant with my son and then with my daughter during that period of time, and our kind of destination TV, because you're absolutely right, Babylon 5 is a prestigious Channel 4 show here in the UK.
No,
yeah, right.
I know, it was on. I was shocked. I got recognized all over England because it was on a decent night. It was like Friday night or Saturday night on a local station.
Absolutely right, and the arc that your character, this is completely true, by the way, Matt. I'm not just making this up because I'm talking to you. It's the arc that your character went through was so meaningful to us then, as a young couple, you know, going through a kind of very emotionally meaningful period in our lives. More than anything, those arcs on Babylon 5 were just absolute destination TV. And I think your relationship was beautifully played, and a really standout moment in that show, actually.
I think that both of Ivanova's relationships, with Talia and with Marcus, were extraordinary, because they were subtle and they were very realistic. They were, one was, well, they were both kind of unrequited love.
Yeah.
And it was really showed you who Ivanova was, with the expense of never allowing herself to love. She committed herself wholly to her mission in work. And that's sad. You know, we all know somebody in our life like that who
So
has,
true.
yeah, who has given up any hope of love, and who pushes people away. They push people away in fear of getting hurt or feeling vulnerable. And that's something that is a very real, we all know somebody like that. And that's why I think Ivanova was so it resonated with so many people, is because everyone has a fear of being hurt. Everybody has a fear of being vulnerable and showing their heart. So you build this brick wall up, and you build this coat of armor up, and everybody can identify with that. This is my outside face. This is what I do to protect myself. And when you slowly rip that off, for me, it happened in my 50s. I just started taking off the bits of armor, and it's very liberating, because now by this point you have the wisdom to choose the right people in your life, but you also have the compassion and the ability to be vulnerable and be open and be loving and be completely honest, and take, you know, because you know who to trust at this point in your life. When you're in your 20s and 30s, you don't really have that ability to pick the right people to protect your heart. So you get hurt a lot. And so I think that's what everybody was watching Ivanova sort of get hurt and hurt herself. And it was something that resonated with people of all ages.
I think that's very true. I think it was one of the emotional hearts of that entire narrative. And what you're saying, of course, is absolutely true in terms of our vulnerability as younger people, vulnerable to the world, to others. You know, learning how to deal with that. I think that's very, very well said. Before we do any more of a dive into some aspects of your career, I'd like to talk to you about. I'd love to talk about your new project, Dark Legacies, which indeed you'll be signing in the store on the 10th of June. How did it come about, Claudia?
So this wonderful, amazing writer, Chris McAuley, the Irish fellow who's worked with Dracula and all sorts of different huge projects. He's one of the most prolific writers I've ever met. He talk about having your hands in everything. He's just extraordinary. I don't think he sleeps. Honestly, I have a little suspicion that he might be a robot, but I don't know. A robot with a massive heart.
Yeah.
He had this sort of utopian idea, this beautiful idea of taking, first of all, my nonprofit work resonated with him, C3 Foundation, and we began to be in contact. And he had this idea of using, you know, having a safe place for actors, specifically actors in this world, in the sci-fi world, in the genre fantasy world, and having everybody be sort of this collaborative, I want to say almost like a how would you say, like in Israel they have the communes,
the kibbutz, yeah.
The kibbutz, yeah. I consider this like the kibbutz of art, you know, where Chris had this idea where, you know, we can use your image, but you get a little piece of the project. We can, you know, help us. We'll start a storyline, but you're more than welcome to contribute or to give feedback. So it was like this little kibbutz of like-minded people, and let's give something back to the fans that would resonate with them. So with Dark Legacies, we decided to really think big. So games, short stories, audiobooks, which I love doing. And I know my actor friends love performing short stories and audible books. It's an easy gig. It's a fun gig. It's something that everyone I know enjoys. I did years and years of a series called Annie Manx, and it's one of my favorite jobs, the Anne Manx American radio repertoire. They're these sort of, they're like movies, but you listen to them with, you know, full on production with music and everything, sound effects, the whole bit. Those kind of projects I loved. So Chris was up really into that. And so we've done short stories. We're developing games for Dark Legacies in the whole realm of dark universes. So we've got the comic books, we've got the games, we've got the short stories, the audible books, and we wanted to make this universe and kind of employ familiar faces. So that's why Bruce Boxleitner and Peter Jurasek show up, and Pat Tallman. in, you know, my Babylon 5 buddies, because
Yeah.
unlike a lot of projects that I've done in the last 10, 15, 20 years, unlike those, in especially with the advent of cell phones, I'm actually still very much in love with all of the people I worked with on Babylon 5, because we didn't have the distraction of cell phones. We actually got to know each other.
Yeah.
So using my friends and the people that I love and care about was very important to me, and it was important to Chris too. And creating a character, my character, Major Jessica Steele, I wanted her to be different enough from Ivanova, but have some of the themes of loss, trauma, things that people can identify with. I love, you know, the addition of Pat Tallman's character playing my sister, and we have this really sort of this deep-seated, you know, hatred and combativeness and revenge and vengeance. All of those things come into play. But the most important overarching theme was the world is coming out of this really totalitarian sort of regime that has been destroying everything that we stand for, and we're coming into democracy. So you have the themes of all of the waste and the garbage, which people, especially in America, can kind of relate to, you know, a political madness.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm not going to bring
We
that
can
up.
relate to it here as well.
Yeah, you
for
can
sure.
relate to it too. Pretty much anywhere in the world where you had, where yes, fascist,
Yeah, fascism in charge. Yeah, for sure.
communist. Yes. So those themes, those giant themes of a government that is so badly damaged humanity, that's not going to be a cut and dry scenario. You're not going to suddenly drift into democracy and say, hey, everything's fine now. That didn't happen in Eastern Europe. It's not going to happen in Russia. It's never going to happen in China. You have remnants of the old regime that carry through. And as you are cleaning up the mess, the miasma, you're discovering more and more dark secrets and more mess and more complicated plots that somebody has to undo, and also weeding out who do you trust. So there's all these layers and layers of darkness and insanity and you know, Pandora's box that basically you're constantly opening up things saying, well, I thought we took care of that. You know, no, that's come to life too. And so then you also have the human quality of Jessica going through something unbelievably traumatic, which is the death of her parents. And so that whole story structure, and I don't want to give away too many, you know, things for people who haven't seen it, but that's a whole storyline. You're not just dealing with the universe as we know it, but the central characters each have an identity and a crisis that they're going through at the same time. So it's an exploration of these humans and other entities in the whole project, but also just the overwhelming arc of this world, this new thing that we're trying to achieve and to clean up from the past.
What can you tell me about where the comic narrative begins?
Well, here's the thing. I'm kind of concerned about giving things away for anybody.
Of course. Yeah. And I don't want any spoilers. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is because the first issue has, you know, we have extra bonus materials and stuff. One of them, which is a Western theme starring Bruce Boxleitner's character, and I kind of don't want to. People get ticked off when I tell too much. I've been chastised in the past.
I hear you. Won't surprise you to hear I encounter this a lot. So yeah, I respect that. And you've got a wonderful artist on the book, right, Claudia? The mighty Staz Johnson from 2000.
Mighty Staz Johnson, and I cannot believe that that there's that tie-in with the owner of Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, no, it's so the owner of Forbidden Planet, a well-known industry figure, also owns Titan Publishing. Nick Landau used to be one of the early staff members at 2000 AD, and Staz has got a long history of producing great artwork for 2000 AD and for DC and for Marvel, and yeah, he's a hero of ours at the store, and I think he's such a great complementary figure to be working on this project with you and realizing all of this.
I'm really, I've loved what Staz has done. I think the three all three covers and that have come out have been extraordinary. But Staz is such a reputation and such a fan following, and anywhere you go, he's really beloved. We just signed Glenn Fabry
Oh
for
yeah,
yeah,
he's amazing. Well,
yeah,
I don't know if you've ever seen it, Claudia, but one of the things Glenn is very famous for is working with Garth Ennis, who's he's the creator of The Boys, among other many other things, of Preacher, and Glenn was the cover artist on Preacher for the whole run for Vertigo. And his work is very painterly, as you know, very detailed. It's beautiful.
yeah. The people were going crazy. He sort of has a godlike godlike reputation. I posted something about him doing the new issue, and people were going crazy about his previous work. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
just absolutely mad about it. And it's interesting because I'm hoping, are you going to be at the signing on June 10th?
I think I will be, Claudia. Yes, yeah.
Okay, lovely, because I would like to have a look at some of the materials that you have in the store that were done by these artists, because I
Oh,
just
100%. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've looked at their websites and everything. Obviously, I do my homework, but it just, there's a difference between seeing something on a website and actually holding a book in your hand. There's something very tangible about it that I like to see it up close and honest, with no Photoshop and filters. You
Of
know.
course.
I do. I do. What is your favorite, may I ask? I'm sure people don't ask you questions, but I'd like to
No,
ask.
that's true. What's my favorite? My
What is your
favorite.
favorite comic book series? Yeah.
Oh yeah, my favorite comic book series. I'm a big fan. I own an embarrassingly large amount of comic books. Yeah, so I guess there's a there's
course
a
you do.
yeah, there's a multi-leveled answer to that question. Would be that from when I was younger, I was a massive fan of the work of Stan Lee when he was working with Steve Ditko. So Steve Ditko is the original artist on Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, co-created those characters, has a very, very unusual style, and he created some DC characters called the Creeper and Hawk and Dove. And Ditko is a very unusual talent and a very interesting person. He was an Ayn Rand objectivist for just about all of his life. And like Stan Lee, died in his 90s. You know, he's credited on all the Spider-Man movies, but he's got an amazingly unique style. So I'm a big fan of Ditko, anything that he produced. But I would say in terms of contemporary creators, there's a team, a writer and an artist, an American writer called Ed Brubaker and a British artist called Sean Phillips. And then Sean's son Jacob, who is a colorist, and they produce really high-end noir crime fiction comics. They do a series called Reckless for Image. They did a well-known series called Criminal and Ed Brubaker also works in TV and film. He was one of the original script editors for Westworld. You know,
Oh, wow.
but their comic book work is incredible. You know, multi Eisner Award winning work, not within the science fiction space, within the crime space, and it's beautiful. You know, it's as good as the best noir crime fiction novel you'd ever read. And as part of my role here at Titan and FP, I edit crime fiction. It's a big interest of mine. And I've worked with some great authors, not the least of whom is a guy called Max Allen Collins, who is the guy who wrote The Road to Perdition. That film is based upon his work. And he writes the Mike Hammer series these days, which I edit. But Brubaker and Phillips, the graphic novel work is just as good as any of the great, as Chandler, as Hammett. You know, they're really that good.
That's saying a lot. So for
Yeah.
you, it seems to be a combination of great story and great art, as opposed to some people who are avid collectors. They're really primarily concerned with the artwork. That seems to be a lot of, there's an iconic collectible
Yeah.
sort of drive to collect this type of artwork, or artwork from this individual, the grand
Yeah.
poobah icons.
Yeah.
But for you, it sounds like you're also terribly interested in
Yeah,
the story.
I look at comics as a holistic experience, you know, and the great thing about comics, like movies and TV, is that it's you know, group creativity. You know, you know, generally speaking, you do get great writer artists, of course, like the great Will Eisner, great Jack Kirby, but essentially it's 4 or 5 people coming together and telling this narrative, and it doesn't work without each member of the team, and that's what I love about comic books.
Yeah, I was, it's so funny because I'm being introduced, of course, to a lot of this that was always behind the scenes when they were doing anything from collectible dolls, which we're now getting into,
Yeah,
and sort of merchandising and things like that. I understood that somebody would create the mold and somebody else would color it. But when it came to comic books, I was sort of surprised that the artist is separate from the colorist. And that
yeah.
was something that was new to me. I hate to sound naive, but I thought, oh wow, okay, so it's not sort of a one-stop shopping. You go to various people for their
Yeah.
expertise.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? Because if I guess I know when I read my first comic, and it was I was 3 years old, and I was unwell. I was in a kind of kids like lung hospital, and my grandfather, who's an Englishman from Liverpool, he had fought in World War II in an American unit, and just because of what had happened when they landed in Normandy, he got seconded to an American regiment. So he spent
Wow.
his war in Europe with Americans, which
Wow.
meant that he had American rations. And so in his American rations, he would get the rations were much better than the British
Yeah.
rations because we'd had all the supply lines cut.
They had chocolate and coffee.
Yes,
And
chocolate, coffee,
cigarettes.
cigarettes, and comic books. That's what we got in rations every day. So he came back super familiar with Batman and Superman and Captain America, the Human Torch. He loved all that stuff. So when I was sickly as a child, he started reading his comics to me. So I'd always grown up with a sense of the first thing I could read were comics.
Wow.
And so that discipline of it was multiple creators, I was always kind of aware of. But I think it is very interesting because unless you're versed in that art form,
Yes.
the fact that art is essentially, it can be one person, but it's often three people. It's often the
Great.
penciler, yeah, because often you get
Very. Yes.
pencils, then you get an inker,
Yeah.
then you get a colorist, and then you get a letterer as well. So
That's what we
so
have. Yes,
that's it's four people outside of the guy who writes the script, and that's really quite incredible.
that's what was shocking to me. I mean, I know, once again, excuse anybody who's listening to this who thinks what adult Claudia is or how naive, but this has not been my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Until recently. So for me, when they said, "Oh, the letterer," I thought, "Oh, well, of course. Who's going to put the lettering in the little
That's right.
clouds?" I thought it was the artist. No, the artist doesn't do that. And who's going to color it? Well, that's not the main artist either. So yeah, it was really interesting. And these people are known for their particular clean styles or muddled styles or precise
Exactly right.
styles, modern styles, old school styles. Yeah.
Exactly right. Well, the guy I just mentioned earlier, Steve Ditko, he mostly penciled and inked his own work, but every now and again he would be inked by somebody else, and the difference that another inker can make to a penciler is massive, and they can have a clean line, they can have a sketchy line, and it really does fundamentally affect the beauty, and it's all usually a lovely result. I mean, you get inkers that don't suit particular pencilers, but it is just fascinating.
It really is. And this leads me to my next question, and the interviewer becomes the interviewee now.
I like this. This is good. This is
No,
good.
well, because it's an exchange of information for
Yeah.
me as well, and it's exciting for me. And so, we're going through the writers are striking right now in the Writers Guild is striking, and the Screen Actors Guild, of which I'm a member, and I'm a member of AFTRA, will probably strike next.
Yeah.
One of the hot topics is AI. And I'm wondering what you think, how this would translate into the comic book world. How replaceable. Yeah, no, please.
Yeah. So here's my personal view. My personal view is that however sophisticated an AI is, what currently what I can see AI being able to do is replicate rather than truly innovate. And I don't think, for example, I use a movie analogy. So there's that guy, a very highly respected guy who teaches theory in script writing, Robert McKee.
Yeah.
He's the kind of doyen of, okay, well, these are the
Yeah.
basic things you need to do to produce, a script. And a lot of people have become very successful taking his courses, and he's kind of considered to be, one of the very big influential figures in terms of how scripts are put together and sold to studios. Except somebody who really is not interested in Robert McKee's point of view is Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino's got no interest in the lessons that Robert McKee has got to teach. And Quentin Tarantino's talent just came from within himself, completely ignoring any kind of set rules of narrative and pace and, multiple viewpoints. And it's all just him and his unique brain. I don't believe an AI can come up with those kind of voices, and there's still such a wealth that, the most sophisticated brain in the history of existence is the human brain, right? And what it is capable of just can't be simply mapped onto a computer, no matter how complex that computer is.
I agree with every single thing you've said, but my fear, and tell me if you think this is unfounded, but my fear is that the younger generations who have a much smaller ability to focus for any period of time, and who are used to AI performances in various things, and also the short snippets of social media and so forth. These are people who maybe don't go back and study Jenna Rollins in her movies. This is a rich, varied performance that no computer could possibly, no robot could possibly emulate. But my fear is that the quality of performances in this disposable culture where there's so much product, there's like this 5%, maybe 3% of extraordinary work, most of it coming out of England, really great television and film, and then with great performances. And then you have all this sort of crap, like filler crap.
Yeah.
The more people get used to filler crap and popcorn for the masses, then I think the less they'll care if it's AI or not.
That is undoubtedly a fear of mine, and I think it's a completely justified fear. The only thing I would say is, generally, when say a particular movie cuts through and does something, reaches audiences in a fresh new way and becomes something of a cause celeb, it's nearly always something that comes out of left field, even if it's working in a genre that people are so familiar with. And I guess the most recent example, a very, very mainstream example I can think of, is a lot of people have been disappointed with recent comic book movies, right? Because they all feel a bit samey and all a bit AI-esque, even though they're being, written by actual teams of writers and directors. But then you get somebody with a singular vision, like James Gunn, and he makes Guardians of the Galaxy 3. He writes and he directs it. And suddenly that film's got legs like no Marvel movie has had recently, and everybody loves it. And everybody's coming out in a state of euphoria and going back and seeing it again. And what they're really responding to is human innovation.
Yes, and the freshness of it, and the humor and the human qualities of it. I agree. And there is also a point of saying that you can evoke massive amounts of human emotion. And I mean, I cried over that little short film. I think it was a Pixar film that was about the little bow.
Oh yeah, that's.
I mean, the little bow, the animated bow.
It's great. It's lovely.
Yeah. There was no dialogue, and I was weeping like a child. It was just so beautiful. So you can pull the heartstrings without even voices or real human beings or anything. But once again, that was the animators. That was not produced by AI. That was the artists that evoked that, and the directing and everything. So it's a really touchy subject. I as a human, obviously, and as a performer, I think, well, I have a uniqueness about me that nobody can reproduce. And if you cry, I can tell when somebody's fake crying. I can tell when somebody I don't care about them. There's a lot of actors out there who have a lot of soul, that they can do anything. You're just drawn in. There's a lot of actors out there that look good, but there's nothing going on here. They're just saying lines. And so it's a hard thing to really wrap your head around. Like, when will this become obsolete, or will there be a lot of AI stuff and then still the real artists producing things?
In the worst case scenario, that would be my hope. I hope AI becomes, if it does flourish, becomes an enclave, and then I think there's certain things that, for example, the power of live theatre. It's very difficult to do that with anything other than live, living human beings, and the greatest thing on in London at the moment in the West End, to my point, I guess, is a production of something which is very familiar to theatre fans, old school movie fans, and it's the latest West End production of Guys and Dolls. Yeah, Frank Lesser's Guys and Dolls. Now, the West Enders actually, over the last 20, 30 years, has probably put on about 3 or 4 different productions of Guys and Dolls that have all done very well. In about 2006, Jane Krakowski won the American actor won an Olivier Award for playing Miss Adelaide, and there was a version that had Patrick Swayze in it, version that had Don Johnson in it, both playing Nathan Detroit. There is a version of Guys and Dolls that's on right now in London, and if you get the chance to see it when you're visiting, you really must. It's at the Bridge Theatre at London Bridge, and it is an immersive version of Guys and Dolls, where you are in a New York City crowd, and it takes place around you with this high-tech set that goes up and goes down and moves around, and you get shepherded around by cast members who are dressed as like 1940s NYPD cops, and Nathan Detroit and Sky Masterson and Miss Adelaide and Sarah Brown. It's all happening around you, and it is absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the 2 or 3 best things I've ever seen at the theatre.
Oh my gosh, I have to get tickets to that.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's incredible.
That's so funny.
And you have to get the standing tickets, and literally all the previous, a lot of well-known US performers who've been in Guys and Dolls, Jane Krakowski being one of them, has flown over to be in the audience and experience it, and it's I couldn't recommend it highly enough. And that, to me, that's a pure distillation of human entertainment, and something that can only really be done with people in a shared space.
Oh, I've got to get tickets to that. And that's funny because it harkens back to a book I was working on where of a futuristic like film noir detective story. That's so funny. And it had this cloud above that was all the people that had money, and then everyone else, the poor, lived below in an earth that is now this just wrecked with pollution and everything. And there was this little higher area that everyone was striving to live in. And I have to revisit that. I have another young adult book coming out that's set in an Elizabethan alternate universe that's coming out from Macmillan next year. So wonderful. I'm still dabbling in my books as well. But that just reminded me, when you said that immersive experience, that just reminded me of it. That sounds amazing. I'm going to later on this afternoon check into tickets for that, Guys and Dolls.
Yeah, check it out. I'll send you a link. I'm not exaggerating. It's a euphoric experience.
I would love that. I'm only there for a couple of days, so I hope I can snag a ticket or 2.
Claudia, speaking of euphoria and the euphoria yourself have instilled among your your fan base over the years and your involvement in this aspect of entertainment, did you have any sense when you initially began acting and began interacting with the art that this is where your career would take you?
No, you have to understand, I had just finished Clean and Sober with Michael Keaton and Morgan Freeman.
Amazing film. Brilliant film.
I had just finished that. I thought I was going to have a feature film career. I did The Hidden, which was sort of a cult favorite for New Line Cinema.
I'm a big fan of The Hidden also. Carl McLachlan, great film. And your part in that is great, is fantastic.
Yeah. So here I had these 2 films under my belt, and I had done some all of this, the television one does when they're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, every major show that was on the air, from Dallas to Falcon Crest to...
Well, I remember seeing you in an episode of Hunter once, I think.
Yes, Hunter. Oh, and speaking of Mickey Spillane's Mike Hunter, I did that. I did, I did Murder, She Wrote, I did every major 80s and 90s series I did. I wasn't in Dynasty, but I did Dallas and Falcon Crest. But all the rest of them, Jake and the Fat Man, A-Team, all of those crappy series that were disposable, wonderful entertainment. I did all that. And I thought after I did this like little run of great films that, okay, now I'm starting my film career. I'm in my early 20s. This is going to be great. And then I was offered Babylon 5 and my agent said, just take it because it won't last more than one season. It's not a Star Trek spinoff, sweetie. So don't worry about it. Just take it, do the series, get the experience, and it'll be fun. And we all know what happened then.
The rest is history.
But it's interesting because I'm such a history freak. I mean, I am literally a Ricardian. I mean, I am like an expert at 12th century to 18th century European history. I live in the past. Up until 10 years ago, I was writing with a Venetian crystal pen and my own homemade ink. I mean, I am really not of this time at all.
Yeah.
And here I'm in the sci-fi world. It's like, it's so funny. I'm not a futurist. It's so funny. It's interesting. I had done a trip during the pandemic to Denmark because they were letting us Americans in. So I went for a month and I had fans show me around Denmark. It was so fun. And one of the guys was a futurist, and he said, and as I was talking, I'm talking about Danish history and the monarchy and all this stuff, and I'm talking about the original kings and the Vikings and this and that. And the guy is like, well, I thought you would be so much different. I'm a futurist. I wanted to meet you because you're Ivanova. And I was like, no, I'm not. Totally different worlds. But yeah, so that's interesting. But I never saw myself here, but I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be working with Chris McAuley and Staz Johnson and all these great Glenn Fabry. And I'm thrilled to be working with Scratch Comics and Diamond Comics. And I'm happy to be creating games for people that have great stories, great writing. No more, schlock. And I'm excited also for what the future holds for all of this stuff, because it's something that is creative. As long as the writing is good, I don't care where I'm putting myself. That's the thing, is I'm not going to produce crap. That's my biggest sort of draw the line at. I understand the need for entertainment, but I also want to make it good entertainment, good quality entertainment. It doesn't necessarily have to hammer home, morals and themes, but there has to be something in that theme that resonates with people on a human level and that moves them to think. I don't want to just make something that is disposable to waste time with. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here to make thoughtful projects. So I hope that resonates with people. So far, the feedback from issue 1 has been extraordinary, and people love it, and they can't wait for issue 2. So I'm excited about this comic book journey. I'm excited to work with everybody, and I want anyone to know, educate me. Seriously, send me links to things that you love. Send me things to read, because I need to immerse myself in this world. I didn't grow up with comic books. Bill Mooney did. He has an original.
Yes, of course he did. Yeah.
He owns one of the original Superman. I think it's worth like $1 million or something. Yeah. He has an extraordinary collection at his house. I've seen it. His guitar collection and his comic book collection are amazing. And some of my other friends are fully immersed in the video game world, for instance. And here I've done hundreds and hundreds of roles, and I've never played a video game in my life other than Mario Brothers.
Well, I'm with you on that one, although I have two adult children, as I said, who love their video games. So, I think everything you've said, I think that's beautiful and very well said. And I think that's the beautiful dichotomy of your situation. I think it is that, while not being a part of this genre sci-fi fantasy explosion, it allows you to look at it from the outside and really play around with it and have fun with it. And you've been so embraced by the entire community.
Well, it's storytelling, but once again, I have been fortunate enough to play characters that resonate with people and that have inspired people. I have people who tell me that they came out of the closet because Ivanova was bisexual. People who re-embraced their Jewish identity because Ivanova embraced hers. I mean, people who found something that was strengthening in her conviction and her morals and her discipline. Young girls that come to me and say, you were like a mother figure to me, even though you were only in your 20s. It was like I clung on to that ideal of a woman who was strong and could take care of herself. but was still vulnerable and fallible. So I think that in doing these characters throughout my life, that's what people see, but then they meet me and I'm approachable and I'm a decent human being. So I think that the combination of that is made for a long career, and I hope that it continues on for a very, very long time. They're not kicking me out of here anytime soon, I'll tell you that.
I think that's a beautiful
Come
point
on,
to
man.
close out on, and I love your openness to the experience. I think that's
Oh, are
a
you kidding me? I'm thrilled.
yeah. I mean, it's very unusual, and I think it's a it's a wonderful thing to experience. So I love your energy and your openness to the ride, to the whole comic book ride, the whole science fiction ride. I think it's wonderful.
I'm nothing but excited, my dear. I'm going to get in that store and take recommendations and pictures of things and research and just, learn all about this beautiful world. It's fantastic. It's all done with heart, and that's all that matters to me.
Yeah, very well said. And one more time for everybody watching this, the links to pre-order your editions of the books we've been talking about are
Dark
just
Legacy.
below us, right below us on this YouTube channel. And Claudia will be with us at Forbidden Planet London on the 10th of June. You can find all the details about the signing on the forbiddenplanet.com site, and we really look forward to welcoming you to the store then, Claudia.
Thank you so much. And anybody can bring extra stuff. Forbidden Planet is kind enough to let me raise some money for C3 Foundation. Anybody struggling with alcohol use disorder can visit c3foundation.org. We are the only global nonprofit devoted 100% to helping people utilize the Sinclair method for excess drinking. Everything is free on the site. You can find resources and find a provider there. And yes, you can bring your items and I'll sign them, and the money will go to a good cause. So thank you for allowing me to do that as well.
Oh, of course. Here, I have many personal reasons to wholeheartedly endorse what you're doing,
Thank you.
I know many
everybody
people
does.
who've been there. So it's wonderful, and we're very pleased to help.
Yep, and I will bring some literature to share with people. And as always, I'm happy to talk to anybody who knows somebody who's struggling.
Yeah, thanks so much, Claudia, and thanks so much for sparing so much time to have a chat today.
Oh, this was a beautiful conversation. I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, thanks very much. Me too, Claudia. I'll see you in a couple of weeks, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you so much. You too.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.